Yeah, come on, people. You know what it is. It is on the Bywire. My name is Dan Lewis, bringing you the news you know you can trust. 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night. Where else are you going to be but with me on the Bywire? What is good? I hope you guys have had a fantastic day. I hope you're keeping it real out there. There is a lot going on as per usual, and we are here to bring you the facts, the news, what's going on, and what's good. Obviously, today, as you've seen in the title of the show, we are covering what is happening in Afghanistan, who has benefited from the last 20 years of turmoil in the region, and also who have been the people that have suffered the most from what is going on. It's a serious situation, and do you know what? One person who put it very well today, I'm going to start off with this, is there's in Parliament today, politicians have been talking about the government's actions. What's next? Boris Johnson has obviously said that he will be having an online meeting with G7 leaders, which is basically seven of the world's largest nations, most powerful nations. They'll be coming together on a little Zoom call. Imagine someone Zoom crashes that, like no, that's a serious meeting. It needs to be serious, obviously. But do you think them man have got security and all that? Nah, I don't know, because them man are dumb in it. But anyway, listen, they're going to be having a serious meeting to talk about what kind of international action is going on. And like right here in the UK, we spoke about it on a previous show yesterday. We were talking about the humanitarian issues in regards to the people fleeing the country. We've seen pictures on the news and on the internet of people climbing onto the side of airplanes as they're leaving the airport, people packed into airplanes, people packed onto all kinds of different transport, trying to flee Afghanistan because of the takeover by the terrorist organization, the Taliban. So we've got a special show tonight. We are covering it. We do also have Lucy Nichols from Stop the War Coalition, who's going to be on a little bit later to explain a little bit more about that what they're doing, what their view is on things, and what kind of action people can take to be supporting this kind of activity. It's a very complex issue. It's very complicated. There is a lot more to it than just some terrorists have taken over a country. The country has had years and years of issues going on. But one person I think who explained very well what's gone on and what's happening right now and what needs to happen is a good friend of the show and a good friend of Bywire. It's Mr. Jeremy Corbyn MP.
Any examination of the longer-term history of Afghanistan will show that wars in Afghanistan do fail. There were 3 in the 19th century and a number in this century. The great game of the 19th century was about preventing Russia getting control of Afghanistan. Later on, the Cold War took over and the Americans supported the opposition to the Soviet Union, thus forming the Mujahideen, which morphed into the Taliban and so much else. There are some serious historical lessons to be learned here about how we take major foreign policy decisions. And it's beyond disappointing that the Prime Minister's response this morning appeared to be that he was not prepared to countenance a serious inquiry into all of this. I can hear my friend, the late Paul Flynn, speaking about the numbers of soldiers that died in Helmand. I can hear all those that spoke up against this intervention, not because they support the Taliban, not because they are not serious about human rights, but because they were serious about a long-term peace in the world that recognises the historical position we've got ourselves into. And now surely is the time for a sober reflection on the disaster that has happened in Afghanistan.
Hear, hear.
Big thanks to Politics Home for sharing that video online. Obviously, we've got that using that from them. So big thanks to them, guys. And obviously, thanks to Jeremy Corbyn and other MPs, predominantly within the Socialist Campaign Group, for making very solid cases for what needs to happen and what the government should be doing, giving an opposition to what Boris Johnson is saying. Because let's be honest, Boris Johnson is not the type of man to take as Jeremy said, a sober view over what's gone on. Man will just go into things head first and act like a bumberhole like he is. Now, I'm going to go straight into Open Democracy, who have released an article just today. With or without the Taliban, COVID and climate will inspire terrorism. We need to have a conversation about this because there is So much more going on in regards to just the fact that the Taliban have taken over Afghanistan. And we need to look at the fact that, jihadis across the Middle East and continents will be turning or are turning to violence, and will continue to, whatever the new or new or old rulers of Afghanistan choose to do. Now, let's think about this. The article here, basically, it gives us a really, really good explanation of what's gone on in the last 3 days. The Taliban effectively having full, control over Afghanistan. As I mentioned before, the scenes of what's going on, but also here looking at asking the questions about what Boris Johnson's government are doing, what they knew last week, what they know now, what they knew a few months ago as well, and looking at exactly what happens now. The thing is that the Taliban don't just operate in Afghanistan. They're international. They have people all around the world. As we know, they have caused trouble in other countries. And the fear is here is that, there are many terrorist organizations mentioned in the article, Al Qaeda and ISIS, who have a presence in the Middle East and elsewhere across the world. They also, these terrorist groups have actually committed crimes of terrorism here in the UK. And looking at what's gone on with like the assessment from like the UN as to exactly where they are. One of the facts here is that the Al Qaeda operates at least 15 provinces and has been operating under the Taliban protection in some areas, including Kandahar and Helmand. You remember Helmand was a very big base for the USA. The UK used it as well, the military that is. And we need to be conscious of what these terrorist groups are doing and where they're looking to. The other thing here is that these groups they may not continue to do well in what they want to achieve and what they want to be able to do. The Taliban may just wipe them out because the Taliban do have that power now. What we need to think about is the fact that they have people, as I mentioned before, across the world. Now, if one terrorist group falls and they've got people across the world, it falls in the Middle East, but they've got activists, terrorists, soldiers elsewhere in the world, will those terrorists then look to turn to the likes of the Taliban, thus creating an even bigger group? The other thing that the article covers is the fact that there is a global issue in regards to what these groups can achieve together without them falling, if they were to just come together and work together as well. Now, there are signs, the article explains that there are signs that things may be changing. We've only got a few days here to really look at what's gone on. But the fact that the leaders of the Taliban are heading into Afghanistan, they're moving away from other countries. And do they want to continue in the way that they've behaved previously? Do they want to change their ways? They've spoken about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, protecting women. And is that true? Are they going to do that? Is that just to try and appease other interested parties? Let's not forget that Russia has interest. They are, with the fact that Afghanistan does have a border with Russia and China, or does have relations with Russia and borders with China. The fact that, are they going to be looking to say things to those countries, likes of those countries, to try and appease them, or are they going to be looking to actually go against their words? Now, they're already looking at what they can do in regards to the power that they now hold. They're definitely looking at what this means internationally. There's no question about that. We're going to be looking at the other countries that are ready to engage and what type of engagement that means, whether that means new wars, whether that means new infiltration by, the likes of European armies, even Chinese, and what embassies. So whether there's the Chinese embassy, the Russian embassy, that they are in Afghanistan, whether they're going to be continuing to stay there and work with the Taliban. So we need to think about our relations with those countries as well. And that's why I think Open Democracy have done a really good job of explaining more detail about exactly these issues. I know that I'm covering quite a lot here, so I definitely recommend heading over to Open Democracy, looking into this further. The other thing as well that we have to look at is that as things continue, as there is unrest across the Middle East, growing power from the Taliban, as mentioned, this may give power to other terrorist organizations and groups. And the COVID pandemic, which is definitely increasing the marginalization in those parts of the world, and the global failure to provide vaccination for those countries. It's going to cause unrest, people being annoyed, people being upset. Who are they going to turn to when it's the West that are hoarding these vaccines? As we've mentioned before, that the UK have an unbelievable surplus of vaccinations. The citizens of these countries are going to be turning against the West. There is also the fact that there is climate change, and the climate change is disproportionately affecting these countries, again, specifically in the Middle East, but also Northern Africa. And as these terrorist groups start to grow, this climate change, we know that the majority of it is caused by the more Western countries, the more, as they call it, the economically developed countries. People, again, they're going to be turning against these types of countries. Like I say, Open Democracy have covered this fantastically. I think they've done a brilliant job. Got to give a shout out to Paul Rogers, the journalist who's written this article. Definitely go check that one out. Now, moving on, we have also got a story from the Canary. This one, I think, it adds to the title of the show. It is our headline. Who benefited from the war in Afghanistan? They'll be meeting in London next month. What do we mean by this? Who are the people who make money out of war? Well, just, most modern smartphones have a stocks app where you can have a look at stocks and share prices. Have a look right now. You'll see that share prices are going up in the weapons manufacturers across the world. We've spoken to on the show previously Palestine Action, who have been taking direct action outside Elbit, the arms company, who provide arms to the Israeli government that attack Palestinian people and build Israeli settlements on Palestinian lands. There is more than Elbit, there's BAE. And what the Canary are talking about here is, number one, they're looking at, who are the victims been? It's, there's the people in the UK that have been victims of what have gone on, but more importantly, it's the people of Afghanistan, the people in the Middle East that have been victims of what are going on. Some of the statistics that we have here is that 47,245 civilians have been killed since 2001. And most people in the USA haven't benefited, but 2.261 trillion dollars, that's US dollars, has been spent on the war. But let's not forget also, alongside that, 2,442 military personnel from the US have been killed as well. More than 450 British soldiers have also been killed. And in 2013, the British cost of the war in Afghanistan is at £37 billion. So who is it who's benefited? The Canary, I love the way that they work. They go across the board here, as in who they've spoken to. Highlighting a tweet from from Loki, talking about Ben Wallace when he was on LBC recently. He was saying he had this little moment where he broke down and he's talking about Afghanistan, acting like, oh, this is terrible, this is really horrible. But as Loki said, Ben Wallace was overseas director of arms company Kinetic, which benefited handsomely from the occupation of Afghanistan. So these people, these politicians, while they sit there on TV, the likes of Dominic Raab, no one saw what was coming. Dominic, there's a lot of people who have been saying for a long time what is going to happen. We saw this coming. Don't act stupid, don't act dumb. Ben Wallace acting like, oh, I didn't know it, I didn't expect this. I bet your pocket knew what was going on, bro. You get me? So these politicians here in the UK, they are also benefiting from it, but specifically the arms companies. Just to highlight out of that, in regards to the arms companies, there is the The world's largest arms fair is coming back to London. This arms fair was actually in London as the World Trade Centers fell back in 2001, so 20 years ago. But from the 14th to 17th of September, the arms fair that will be there at the Docklands will have 1,700 arms companies exhibiting their different weapons. I wouldn't know what to see there, but what is fantastic is that the Canary have highlighted the fact that there has been 2 decades of resistance against these arms fair, people coming out. And what's brilliant, I always think with these things, you always see the videos online, is that it's a wide range of people. It's not just, as they call it, lefties, loony lefties. You get Christian groups, you get all different types of religious groups who come out and they want to try and stop these weapons. As a British citizen, I don't want these weapons to be displayed in our country either. I don't want arms fairs here either. Also, I just want to highlight on the back of this, obviously, check out the Canary article. No question about that. They go into full detail about the DSEI arms fair, the kind of work that's been done to blockade it. People have gone out and blocked ships from coming down the Thames that have got arms all over them. You know, why are we making these boats with weapons and stuff when we need to be housing people that are homeless in this country? The veterans, the people that we send out to these wars and stuff, they're the ones who come back to the UK and they end up not having access to housing, mental health care, proper healthcare, these kind of things. These are important, that we're not spending these billions or trillions of pounds and dollars on here in the UK and over in the US. But also in Liverpool on September the 11th, same anniversary as the World Trade Centers, Liverpool activists will be protesting against the electronic arms fair run by Elbit, who I mentioned earlier, that will be coming to Liverpool in November. They're going to be taking action to protest against that, while the council still muddle around as to whether they're going to cancel it or not. Fun fact on that one, the council own the building. The leader of the council has said that or the mayor of the council has said that she is against the arms fair coming in. She will do everything to stop it. Yet still, she doesn't seem to be able to due to legal advice. Now, I like to try and get people on the show who know what they're talking about, specifically what's going on. I mentioned Jeremy Corbyn earlier. We showed his speaking in Parliament, who was formerly, we're still a member, but I think he was the chair of Stop the War Coalition here in the UK. So Stop the War, obviously always welcome on the show. Great people. We have Lucy Nichols, who is an activist and organizer within Stop the War. You guys do some fantastic work. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Really glad that you could be here with us. First of all, you guys were outside Parliament this morning. Could you just tell us exactly what you guys were doing, why you were outside Parliament? What difference does that make? You know, what was your aims there?
So we headed to Parliament Square at 8:30 this morning, so it was a bit of an early start. But the plan, I know, it's horrific, but no, it was lovely. But the plan was to get sort of as many Labour MPs or anti-war MPs, doesn't have to be Labour, outside Parliament giving an anti-war speech before they would go into Parliament, into the Houses of Commons, to then give the debate on Afghanistan. It lasted a good few hours, and I caught quite a lot of it. So we had Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, Richard Bergen, Zara Sultana, and Belrabero Addy, all sort of on our Stop the War banner, taking turns to give speeches, and as well as a speech from the Vice Chair of Stop the War, Chris Nineham, and the whole thing was chaired by Shelley Asquith, who's our new chair.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. You know, obviously you've mentioned a few very, very good friends of anti-war movements, and also some friends of the show here as well. Now, Stop the War, you know, for people who don't know, obviously it's kind of in the name, it's as it says on the tin. But what is the aim of what is the aim of Stop the War? What kind of things do you do? Do you just turn up outside Parliament with banners and megaphones, or is there more to Stop the War than that, which I know there is?
Yeah, we do. I mean, yeah. The clue is in the name. We're sort of a campaign, a coalition, actually, Stop the War Coalition, a coalition of all sorts of groups, all sorts of people from all over the UK who oppose British and US military interventions and imperialism, specifically in the sort of Middle East, Central Asia, North Africa region, but as well as, you know, the Latin America and more recently over in China. We were set up in 2001. In the early 2000s, 2003, sorry. I wasn't alive. I don't know the year, but it was the early 2000s. I think 2001. After 9/11, to oppose the British invasions of Afghanistan and in Iraq, as well as to sort of call for a free Palestine and an end to Islamophobia in the UK. And since then, we've been doing just that, which is campaigning against wars in Yemen and Syria, Libya, Iran, and most recently our campaign has been centered obviously around earlier this year it was Palestine, but now it's more on Afghanistan, which is facing a extremely worrying crisis.
Definitely. No, thank you for that explanation. I think it was back 2001 when I think I was 11 when millions of people marched from or through London, to Parliament, to call on the government, Tony Blair's government, the Labour government at the time, to not go to war in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, Iraq, take that military action out there. And it was fantastic scenes. Jeremy Corbyn, who we mentioned before, and some of the other MPs that you mentioned were there. Like I speak to some of my friends, their parents took them, and they marched. It was a massive march. We saw similar in Washington. If you look on the Bywire Twitter today, we shared one of the videos from Jeremy Corbyn speaking actually in Washington. It's interesting. I was, I've got to mention it, the fact that the guy is always just seems to be on the right side of history, yet for the last 5 years has been made out to be one of the most horrible, nastiest people in the world. It's just unbelievable that's what the media can do. Now, right now, the media are kind of running circles around the place as to whether we should take refugees in, whether we should take refugees in, whether we should send troops back into Afghanistan, whether we shouldn't. And they're asking a lot of questions. They're not delivering many answers because they're speaking to politicians who have got a clear narrative on what they want to do, which is confuse people. Right? Politicians want to confuse people. They want to scare people. And it's highly frustrating. So specifically at the moment, what are the calls on the government from Stop the War Coalition? What are you guys saying that should be happening? Are you saying basically we need to send the troops back out there? Or are you saying that we need to have some kind of diplomatic process? Please tell us more.
We're definitely not saying we want troops going back into Afghanistan. What we're calling for from the UK, and I guess US governments, are sort of reparations to Afghans. You were saying earlier 47,000 or more civilians died. Those will have mostly been Afghan civilians who have obviously suffered untold evils at the hands of not only the Taliban but the US and UK and NATO troops who are awful over in Afghanistan. We're also calling for more aid to be given to Afghanistan from the British government, which can afford it. And I guess most pressingly is a call for the British government to take in as many refugees as is possible, as is humanly possible. We are probably going to see, unfortunately, a renewed refugee crisis in the coming months, which is obviously completely tragic. But with that comes all these horrendously racist and Islamophobic debates over whether refugees should be allowed into the country, whether they're worthy, whether we can trust them. And that in turn will obviously lead to a sort of uptake in Islamophobic ideas from the government, but also from, proliferated by the government right down to normal levels of society, and probably an awful lot of racism. So I think, in addition to calling for justice for Afghans who are still in Afghanistan, we need to be calling for the British government to take refugees in and treat them with the sort of respect that they ought to be treated with as human beings like you or me. If we were suddenly made refugees and made to go through horrible wars and risk lives and stuff, the one thing we'd want is a government to take us in at the end. So if you put yourselves in the shoes of those Afghans who have been made to force their homes and been through all sorts of trials and tribulations, I think you'd understand why they just want a bed. Do you know what I mean? A bed and feeding and warm clothes and safety for their kids. So that is what Stop the War is calling for. And you'd think it wouldn't be too difficult, considering it was the UK that put Afghanistan largely where it is now, the UK and US governments and NATO forces. So that's what that's what Stop the War is calling for. It's calling for sort of any form of justice for the Afghans.
Fantastic. Like, obviously fully support that, myself, and the show support what you guys do. Just as a side note to the people in the comments who hate us, thank you for adding to our views. Thank you for adding to our interactions. You help all the algorithms. So big up the haters, but big up even more everyone tuned in who actually cares about what's going on in Afghanistan right now. I love the haters, man. But no, on the point of what you were saying, sorry to sidetrack there. The work that Stop the War are doing, calling on the government, working with MPs that support those messages, and trying to get that information out there. How is it that people can get involved if they support what you're talking about, if they want to, wherever they are in the UK? And I know obviously there's links in the US as well. We do have a small international audience on the show. Hey, we love the international vibes. But how could people get involved? What are the actions that they can take? Maybe not specifically having to join up to stop the war, but what kind of things can people be doing? Should they be writing to MPs? What are you recommending?
Well, political activism doesn't start and end at the vote. The Labour Party isn't necessarily going to reflect the views that Stop the War holds and the views of, anti-war government, anti-war activists around the country. So it's important to think outside Parliament, and obviously do write to your MP, because the MPs are meant to represent the views of the constituents. So if you write to your MP and get a lot of other people to do it, then they may well turn around in Parliament and be totally anti-war and be totally pro-refugee. But there's other actions you can do as well. There's a number of protests, I think, that will probably pop up in the next few weeks around letting refugees in, and being anti-war. I know there's one in Manchester on the 28th, I think it is. I can't remember the location, but there certainly is one. So if you're in Manchester, go to that. If not, then get involved in your local Stop the War branch, your local CND branch. There are branches of these organisations anywhere you go in the UK, you won't be that far away from a branch, especially as, people grow more angry about Afghanistan. People will be looking to stop the war and will be wanting to get more involved. And there's no reason you shouldn't set up a new branch or, get involved, on the internet. If you don't see any other way, if you don't see any other events taking place near you. But there are always going to be online events for Stop the War if you're looking to sort of grow political consciousness, which is, really important. They're always very accessible, that you'll be able to watch on Facebook and Zoom and that kind of stuff. And just in terms of, anything else, speak to other people. Do you know what I mean? Like, raising awareness isn't the be all and end all, but you can't, grow a movement if you don't have anyone with you when you're doing it. So if you learn something that's horrific and you're upset by it and you're angry and it's pushing you to join your local Stop the War branch in Cardiff or Bristol or wherever, then tell your sister, tell your mum, tell your friend, tell your housemate that's making you angry too, and maybe they'll be angry with you, and that's how you bring them along to the next protest, because you shouldn't go to a protest alone. Give them a leaflet if you get given one. I think the most important thing to do is probably look up Stop the War or the CND, all these movements, and look at the websites and sign up to the mailing list, because you sort of you turn around one day and you're holding the banner for Stop the War, a protest in Parliament Square, and you're not quite sure how you got there, but you're there, and it's not as hard as you think it is to get involved in politics, and you don't have to have a uni degree in politics. I don't, and I don't think you do either, Dan. So it's not that hard, and you don't need to be an expert, but it's about feet on the ground, isn't it? And having people sort of with you on the protest, holding one of your placards, and that's all that matters, really.
Most definitely. Do you know what? I appreciate the way you put that there. That's fantastic. One of the quick things I wanted to say as well is obviously, one of the messages I've gotten back recently from people that I've spoken to, people who have watched the show, is like, it was us who were saying, don't go to war, don't do that. But now, like, when it comes to trying to fix the issues that are going on in Afghanistan and across the Middle East, obviously a lot of people straight away say, well, they're terrorists, they're the Taliban, we need to go in there and bomb them. That's like a natural kind of capitalist imperialist way of looking at things. That's the way capitalism works. It's like, throw bombs, because bombs, not only do they make money for big organizations, but it's a great way to kill brown people, really. And capitalism is racism. Exactly. So, like, what just if you can quickly, because I know we're coming to the end soon, but like, what are the key things that we can do or that the government should be doing to try and ease tensions there and remove the Taliban from Afghanistan?
Well, I think a lot of people are turning around to the anti-war movement and saying, you must be so pleased, you were right all along, this war did lead to instability. But this isn't a victory for Stop the War, it's more of a vindication, a sort of proving that we were right along. It's a tragedy, it's an immense tragedy what is happening in Afghanistan, because it is the Afghan people that will suffer. So Stop the War would never call for any sort of military intervention to bomb for peace. Bomb for peace does not work, as we've seen time and time again across Central Asia, across the Middle East, in Vietnam, in Latin, like everywhere. Bombing for peace is not going to bring peace. It's just going to make the most vulnerable people of a country suffer even more, especially right now, given the COVID crisis, which is, you know, ripping through communities all over the world. And additionally, you can't impose a government, you can't impose from the outside externally what you think a country should have internally. It should only be up to the Afghan people who governs them, and how their country is run. And that doesn't mean to say that we are supporters of the Taliban in any way, shape or form, because, you know, the Afghans didn't ask the Taliban to come and form government. The vast majority of them, you know, aren't in favour of this government, which is why there's so many, you know, refugees leaving the country. What Stop the War is asking, I suppose, the British government do is to not, intervene with bombs and with troops and with arms, but to, you know, aid Afghanistan, give reparations so that, not so that it can build a nation, but so it has the resources for the Afghans to then decide who should govern them and what the best way is. Stop the War will never support any sign of war when it's, especially when it's the UK doing it. Yeah.
No, that's a fantastic explanation. Thank you so much. Especially as well, I know it was last minute getting you on the show tonight, so really appreciate you giving up your time. I'm going to let you go now, Lucy. Obviously, we got your Twitter there. If you guys are interested in the kind of work they're doing, check out Stop the War. It's STW UK on Twitter, same on like Facebook, Insta, all of the socials. But Lucy there as well, doing great work. I'm sure she'll be sharing a lot more information over the coming. Don't know. Lucy, thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely evening. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Now, guys, listen, if you want to get involved, you've heard exactly it right there from Lucy. Check out your local Stop the War Coalition group. They're online, they're on socials everywhere. Also, the evidence is out there. We've spoken about open democracy tonight. We've spoken about the Canary. A lot of independent media are looking at the facts, looking at what's gone on, and giving you evidence about what is going on in the Middle East, what has gone on in the Middle East, and what to expect moving forward. The reasons why so many of the issues we talk about on this show are interrelated in regards to the COVID pandemic, the hoarding of vaccines by the British government and the Western world. Also, the fact of the climate crisis. We've mentioned time and time again, COP26, we need to be there shouting at the world leaders, letting them know, making sure, let them know, fam. You get me? Like exactly what needs to be done, why we need change, and why we need it now. These are the issues that we care about. We want to make sure that you can get the news that you can trust, and we do that through all of our independent media partners. So big up the independent media partners out there that we featured on the show tonight and every night. We will be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. On the same channels. You know what it is. Haters, come true. Come at me. Get me on Twitter as well. Think_become. Make sure you hit up our YouTube and hit subscribe, especially the haters. There's a little bell next to the subscribe button. Yeah. If you click on that bell, you'll get a notification every time I'm online, and then you can come on and you can throw more hate at me. It's boss. The algorithms love it. It helps us reach more people, and it means that we're able to spread good news from good people who do good things all over the place. Big up all of you for checking in. Tomorrow we have got Tom Williams back on the show. He's going to be talking about the media of football, looking at what's happened last weekend. There was a few shockers in the Premier League, and also what to expect this weekend. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to be down at the football this weekend, going and speaking to the guys at Fan Supporting Food Banks, looking at the work they're doing outside a Premier League game to help people who are facing poverty here in the UK. My name is Dan Lewis. This is On the Bywire. Big up all the people involved inside the place and outside the place. Don't know. I hope to see you guys tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Peace and love.